another episode of cost versus performance on VHP engines. Although I don't know exactly how I'm going to title this one, because this is a very specific engine versus a class of engines, right? We're going to talk base model K24 VTEC killer versus Dohc VTEC B series. Yeah, we're taking on the whole class with this base model K24 engine. Why? Because this fucking base model K24 engine smashes Dohc B series VTEC, bro. It's just, it's not even really mod for mod, not a competition anymore. And this is one of those things, I guess, that more time had to go by. I had to see some consistency develop before we could really talk about it. So the other day, I posted a clip of some numbers off of B20 VTEC that Dohc posted on his Instagram, right? He just picked up another coupe that he's already raffling off. But he just did a tune on it and did a cleanup tune or whatnot, and it made 195 wool horsepower and like 150 foot-pounds of torque or whatnot, right? Now, I didn't know what the fuel was because you didn't mention it, and of course that's one of the questions that popped up as well. That's decent numbers for a stock block, which it is decent numbers for a stock block. It was like, what was it tuned on? And I was like, well, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised or shocked if it was pump gas. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It turns out the day later he posted it again, but it was tuned on E85. Right, posted numbers again. I think he retuned it again, but in-depth tune, and it was like 203 horsepower or some shit like that. And he did it on E85. So it stands to reason with a very small power jump that it was E85 both times he tuned it. But anyway, it seems like more realistic, and I've talked about this in depth years ago on the B20, B20 VTEC horsepower expectation type deal. That it's more common to see like 170, 180 wool horsepower on a stock block B20, depending on which block it is. If it's the PHK with just slightly higher compression versus the lower compression, I think it's 9.3 compression or 9.0 compression versus 9.6, so it's not a huge compression spike, but it is still a compression spike nonetheless. And also depends on which head you're using, B16 or GSR. So there's that. There are those things to consider when thinking about horsepower expectations for a stock block B20 VTEC head block combination. So anyway, the whole point is, cost versus performance, right? Now, I've said a lot of times that the B series a B series Dohc VTEC isn't super hard to get to 200 wheel horsepower, right? But when I say not super hard, I mean like you're doing a high compression swap on the pistons or whatnot. High compression swap pistons and bolt-ons, it should be pretty easy to see 200 wheel horsepower. And I stand by that. But when I say it's easy for me that regularly builds engines, not easy for somebody who's just trying to Frankenstein some shit together. Now, if another way you can see 200 wheel horsepower fairly easily is if you use the H22, but even then, more often than not, I see like 185, 190 horsepower coming out of H22s versus the 200 plus that everybody seems to be wanting. Everybody seems to be expecting from the H22. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get there just having an H22. You'll probably have higher torque than a B series. I think that's a given from the displacement, but you're not going to necessarily breach that 200 wheel horsepower mark without doing a little bit of extra work to it. Now, again, to go into performance, we're going to see that the base model numbers off of a VTEC killer K24. Now, this is not a K20, K24, base model K24 VTEC killer. With a base model K24 VTEC killer, simple bolt-ons, and the VTEC cams, OEM VTEC cams dropped in, it's consistently 210 wheel horsepower. 210 wheel horsepower. Now, you may be thinking, well, that's not a super huge jump from the B series. This is true, but 210 wheel horsepower versus 180 horsepower, and also, so like you look at a B20 VTEC stock there, horsepower and torque, you're looking at like maybe 180 horsepower and 130 foot-pounds of torque, versus the K24, which has 210 wheel horsepower and 171 foot-pounds of torque. That's pretty fucking good, and that's a pretty big difference. That difference right there, smash on the fucking B series VTEC, man. And it seems how the B20 VTEC is the big boy VTEC for B series. yeah, I think performance-wise, you can see that it just doesn't match. Doing a head swap on a B20 is way more expensive than doing the VTEC killer on a K24 base model, right? Now, again, we'll talk my market values real quick. As living in South Florida, a place where Honda is populated is pretty heavily. But even though recently I've had to travel a lot more to get the prices I normally get, I've had to go to Central Florida quite a bit. So prices that I would normally pay for something like this, right? So a B20 block. Now, the common asking price for B20 short blocks is between $250 and $300, right? I usually don't tend to pay that. I tend to pay, $100, $150, depending on the completion of the amount of the engine or whatnot. And even then, though, I'm taking a little bit of a gamble sometimes on buying a long block, not knowing the condition it's in. But still, that's the price. Now, for the Dohc VTEC head, depending on which head you're getting and whatnot, and the condition of the head you're getting and all that shit, you're easily paying $500, $450. It used to be back in the day I'd pay $200 and never go above that, but it's not back in the day anymore for those heads. They're few and far between, hard to find, and they are expensive. So you're looking at, on my price, $600 to get that head, right? To get that head and block combo. My price, what I pay. Not considering what the hell the market is in your area. I'll compare that with a K24 base model, which is, again, my price, what I pay. I pay anywhere between $100 to $150 for a K24 long block base model, right? So that's a complete engine, $150. So we're already beating the B20 VTEC in cost, right? Now, cams, I've bought cams as low as $50 or $40, and I've also bought cams as high as $80 to $100, right? Generally speaking, you can get them at $80 all day. People post them at $100, $150, depending on if they have cam gears or not. You can generally get them for $80. So we're into the K24 long block, this modified long block, about $150, about $200 to $250 versus the $600 for the B20 VTEC. Now, we talk transmissions. That's about even on price. If you want to go with a cheap B-Series transmission, you get an LS trans, you're looking at $300 to $500. If you get an EP3 trans, you're looking at $300 to $500, right? So the K24 is a cheaper swap than the B-Series swap, and it performs a lot better. Now, also, the thing is always comes down to it. Every time I mention how cheap the K is, everybody's always talking about the K Pro and all that shit. Yeah, but those are really, they balance out. Like, the cost of the accessory parts that you need for the K series versus the accessory parts you need for the B series, it always balances out. Yes, you can just cheap a cheap ECU and get a cheap chip and get for $100 or whatnot, but versus buying the Honda for the K or a K Pro and whatnot for a K series swap. But if you look again at cost versus performance, the cost balances out. Like, it's more expensive to buy the certain things on the B series, and it's cheaper on the certain things for the K series, and it's vice versa, like depending on which part you're buying. So if they come out to be about similar cost, which is true, and I've already, I guess I can link some K-series swap explanations at the bottom of the video or whatnot, or at the end of the video, but I've already gone over a whole bunch of times the individual prices on things you can expect, and the K-series swap isn't expensive anymore. It is very comparable to the B-series swap, and you get way better performance out of it. And of course, if you want to go stock for stock too, like getting a stock K24A2 or a stock K20A2 and boost to boost, you're not getting 700 horsepower or 600 plus horsepower out of a stock B series versus a stock K series. So again, there's no comparison there. It's night and day. But if you're doing an NA swap and you really want to fucking smash on people, the best way to go is K. Because not only, think about like this, right? Especially if you're going to modify. If you're going to, even a basic high compression piston swap in a K series does well outperforms that of a B series. Now, I say it's pretty easy to hit 200 horsepower on a B series with doing a piston swap. And now imagine if you're doing the piston swap to reach 200 horsepower, imagine if you're already at 200 plus horsepower on low compression for a K24 base model, right? Or even a K20 base model. You're looking at like 9 something compression for a K24 and already making 210 horsepower. Now imagine if you fucking hike the fuck out of compression up to 12.5 and then go from there. Then you're looking at easily a 250 horsepower engine. Easily. Just off the block modifications. Like just doing, with a base model head that's cost literally nothing to get. A base model head with no cost to it. Dropping in some OEM cams than doing that. Yeah, there's no B series that you're gonna get that you're gonna drop in OEM cams as an upgrade and get that kind of high horsepower. As a matter of fact, the Durf Tune B20 VTEC has Type R cams in it, which are the most expensive OEM B series cams you can get, and actually people charge several $100s for those, versus any OEM VTEC K series cams that you can drop in and get the great performance out of that cost like I said, like $80. The only ones that people try and tax on are those TSX cams, the last generation TSX cams. The ones are the best OEM VTEC cams, and they are the best. They have the highest lift, but it's not the best by much. So generally speaking, if for those of you that want to know about those cams too, you don't really necessarily have to grab those. You can grab just about any VTEC K-Series cams, the real VTEC cams, and you're still going to get great results out of them. They're all kind of close to the lift. All right, guys, so that's it for this one. I know you B-Series guys are going to hate on this, and I don't give a fuck. You guys are you're going to learn one way or another. The K-Series is fucking king. And then, it's whatever, bro. It is what it is. Like, I have B-Series builds. I still haven't done my own personal K versus all the Bs I've done for me. But doesn't mean I'm not going to acknowledge the facts. And the facts are the K-Series kills in just almost about any category that you can think of. Even the fucking base model K20, with the VTEC killer is right on par with the fucking with the B series Dohc B series VTEC, and so the K20 alone is which is a shitty base model engine to go off of, is already on par with the best mildly built Frankenstein B series VTEC. So just a lot of things as food for thought. All right, guys, social media links in the description down below, and peace.